Over the past few weeks, allegations have been made against me, my family, and our charitable organization, the Open Hand Foundation, asserting charity fraud and more. I'm here today to provide clarity and transparency to set the record straight. I want to make it 100% clear. At no point in the Foundation's history was there any criminal or financial fraud. None. I also want to touch on why I've been quiet for these last few weeks. A lot of folks have been saying that if I didn't do anything wrong, that I should have said something sooner, or that my conversation with the accusers was considered my full side of the story. But when there is allegation after allegation being made, it takes a long time to gather the evidence and facts to refute claims. This will be my only video response on this matter. I can confirm that as of Wednesday, November 29th, 2023, the Open Hand Foundation has donated $600,000 to the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration. However, it did take too long to get to this moment, and for that, I am sorry. The money is now in good hands to make a lasting impact. For more information on the donation, there will be a link down below that you can check out. Now, to further provide context on the Open Hand Foundation, my mother got sick when I was young. She was diagnosed with frontotemporal degeneration, a form of dementia that far too often goes undiagnosed or misdiagnosed. I was 10 years old when signs of her dementia started showing up. She was officially diagnosed with FTD 4 years later when I was 14, and she died when I was 25. My mom's battle with this disease lasted nearly 15 years, and after experiencing the struggles and hardships of caring for someone with dementia, we decided to start a foundation in her honor. Before this, my family had been donating money as well as spending time with my mother, academics, and doctors to help them with their own understanding of FTD. My father runs an annual golf tournament, and this golf event hasn't always contained a charitable component, but has always been in dedication to my mother to bring awareness to FTD. I would often be present at these events, but beyond giving an occasional speech, I was not and still am not involved in any of the event planning. In 2018, I took two things I'm passionate about, indie games and charity work, and started Indieland to highlight the indie game community and raise money in honor of my mom for a good cause. During several recent Indieland events, press interviews, and podcasts, I went on record saying where the money was going to and that the Open Hand Foundation had worked with various organizations. At different points, the foundation had been in communication with or considered several of them, but it was not appropriate for me to make such statements when final actions had not yet been taken. The Open Hand Foundation's goal was to make a large impact by donating the money to the right place. And a lot of the conversations that were had with various organizations involved the funds not being restricted or came with extremely high administrative costs. Look, any way you say this, action needed to be taken. And to that point, I'm sorry. I'm disappointed that I was not more straightforward regarding the Foundation's timeline for making donations, and that I made statements potentially implying donations were made when they had not yet been. It took too long for clear action to occur, and I apologize for all of this. But such inaction was not done for any selfish or malicious reasons. I want to take this opportunity to apologize to any developers, publishers, content creators, and special guests who were involved with the various events. I'm also very sorry to this year's Indieland sponsor. Their team was incredibly supportive and were a great partner to work with. Most importantly, I want to apologize to anyone who ever donated over the years who felt they were wronged or led astray by any of this. Dementia is an incredibly important cause to me and my family and so many of you at home. Advocating for more awareness has been such an important part of keeping my mother's memory alive. As the Open Hand Foundation board is currently restructuring, I am taking this time to step away from my role as a board member. I am no longer a part of the Open Hand Foundation. For the foreseeable future, should the event continue, Indieland will solely be focused on highlighting indie games. There will be no charity component. I love helping the indie game community and working with developers. And if there are developers out there that want me to play their games, I would be honored to continue to do so. I would now like to take a deeper look and respond to some of the many accusations made. Much of this is going to be dry and complicated because we're dealing with business finances, tax-exempt nonprofits, the IRS, and legal issues. But serious allegations need a serious and thorough response. I will also have included links to official government websites, reliable third-party sources, and copies of relevant Open Hand Foundation documentation related to all these topics in the description down below. Let's start with the Open Hand Foundation's formation. When my mother passed away in 2013, we donated her brain and spinal cord to the same academics and doctors we worked with to further advance their research. There's a link in the description to her autopsy report that confirms her brain and spinal cord were both donated to science. This was an extremely personal decision for us. Because of my family's history, we had considered all legacy efforts that we had personally made to be a part of the Open Hand Foundation's history, which ultimately led to its creation.
Now here's another glaring problem. If you go back to any of their filings, for instance, this is from 2016, you can see that when they checked their organizations, they called themselves a Section 501c3 exempt private foundation. The problem with this is, according to the IRS, they actually have two designations, private foundations and public charities. Generally, organizations that are classified as public charities have an active program of fundraising and receive contributions from many sources, including the general public.
In 2014, the Open Hand Foundation was originally registered as a 501c3 private foundation, which under the law is a nonprofit corporation formed to carry out charitable, religious, literary, educational, or scientific purposes that is recognized as tax-exempt. When the foundation realized the limitations placed on the private foundations themselves, they sought out advice of legal and financial counsel and took action to switch to a public charity. In February of 2016, they filed to terminate the foundation's private status. For more information on the difference between private foundations and public charities, and on private foundations terminating their own statuses, I have provided links to the IRS website down below. In March of 2016, the IRS acknowledged the receipt for termination of private status and indicated to the Open Hand Foundation the necessary requirements the foundation must follow in order to comply with the IRS code. A copy of those notices are also down below with supporting IRS documentation. Further, based on the acknowledgement of the private status termination, the foundation was now required to operate like a public charity as described in the IRS code for a period of 60 months. However, the foundation was also instructed to continue to file as if it were a private foundation. Any possible issues pertaining to such filings can only be considered clerical errors and are in no way intended to be misleading, fraudulent, or criminal in any nature. Since that time, the Open Hand Foundation has been compliant in operating as a public charity, and as such, the status is directly reflected on the IRS's own website. I'll link to you where you can search for yourself to see the foundation currently has a public charity status.
Many crimes, especially fraud, go undetected, and unless you do something especially egregious on your filings, nothing will be flagged to the IRS. In saying that, however, these filings don't seem to be done properly, and they aren't even signed, which is definitely a legal requirement.
In April 2016, after receiving confirmation of the foundation's termination of private status, the IRS had completed a randomized audit on the 2014 tax return and continued to allow the foundation to operate tax-exempt, as it found nothing wrong with the foundation's filings. Additionally, the foundation files all their taxes electronically, which does not require a physical signature on the actual forms, only e-file authorization forms that are sent from a certified public accountant for electronic signature. Not only is this legal, but it is the industry standard for filing taxes here in the United States. The audit letter is linked down below. On to donations. There are generally two types of donations, unrestricted and restricted donations. Most donations are unrestricted in nature. By being unrestricted, donations can go to anything: research, administrative costs, travel expenses, salaries, or bonuses. Doesn't matter. Unrestricted donations come in the form of a donate link on a website, maybe a Twitch stream, or even a telethon. The Open Hand Foundation raised funds in an unrestricted manner with the intention to restrict a larger donation towards dementia research. Larger restricted donations ensure clear measures and direction, but can take time, whereas unrestricted donations are often instantaneous and not tracked. This is one of the big reasons as to why the donation took so long. The organization did not raise enough money to make the impact that would allow the funds to be restricted and avoid those high admin costs. Now let me walk you through the finances. Revenue sources for the foundation include direct and indirect public support, the golf fundraiser revenue, and Indieland revenue. The foundation's expenses include costs for the golf fundraiser and Indieland, operational costs, and various fees, totaling for $178,951.17 worth of expenses over the last 9 years. It's also factually inaccurate that all the money the foundation received in 2023 is unaccounted for. For starters, the Tiltify campaign for Indieland raised just over $64,315.95. After platform and processing fees, we received $61,303.33 from PayPal and Tiltify's credit card processor Stripe. Adding the $15,000 sponsorship donation to the initial estimate income for Indieland 2023 equates to $76,303.33. This does not include merchandise, bits, or subscriptions from Twitch. However, there were real production costs when it comes to running this event. We paid for flights, hotels, appearance fees, supplies, food and catering, costs of goods for merchandise, etc. All of that totaled just under $12,000. This is still an outstanding invoice as not everything has been received or paid yet. Income from Twitch subscriptions and bits, along with merchandise, have offset some of the production costs. So to say the money is missing is simply wrong. Also, to be clear, Indieland does not make money on YouTube. We typically stream only on Twitch. And when we did simulcast to YouTube, we made little to no money. Next, let's talk about the golf tournament.
And the interesting thing about the money the golf tournament raises is that it seems to disappear. Fans of the Completionist who rushed out to defend him tried to claim that because Jirard hadn't spent the money, it wasn't stolen. From 2014 to 2017, filings showed the Open Hand Foundation received between $30,000 to $60,000 per event. This is likely underreported.
In 2019, the foundation reported $123,816 in revenue, but the accusers alleged that $14,000 is unaccounted for. Our books do reconcile, and these accusations are the result of bad math and missing information. The 2019 Indieland's net proceeds were $82,409.19, and when combined with $31,371.55 in revenue from the golf tournament and $10,000 from a direct supporter, it adds up to $123,780.74. To insinuate that there are further issues with 2020 and 2021 tax returns, people forget that there was a pandemic that shut the world down. The golf events are generally scheduled in the springtime when the weather is good for outdoor events. However, when the foundation had to delay the event, the only available dates weren't until November of 2021. Not only did the foundation take donations and sponsorships that had already been paid for 2020 and roll them towards 2021, but not everyone was comfortable being in public with bigger groups of people. So participation was drastically down, especially since the pandemic brought on a recession. Finally, pledges and donations are not always collected at the same time of the event. It might take a few months to receive the funds, often rolling them into the following year's income. As for what the costs are to run an event like this, there are event organizers, venue expenses, crafts and catering, event dinners, support staff, production equipment, rentals, event branded merchandise, security, insurance, and more. Smaller events have smaller costs, and as the foundation scale the events, the expenses increase proportionally. There's talk of $125,000 being embezzled for unknown admin purposes. As previously mentioned, we went from a private to public charity, and under both nonprofit structures, we're legally obligated to spend money on expenses. With that said, it is perfectly legal to hold donations, and in fact is not uncommon for organizations to hold their funds.
I'm a computer scientist, so I really urge anybody that has background in tax accounting for charitable organizations, or hell, if the IRS is watching this, One of the things that Carl brought up to me very recently was the 5% rule, which again, this is a very complicated rule, but the idea is the US government expects foundations to use their assets to benefit society, and they enforce it through Section 4942 of the Internal Revenue Code, which requires private foundations to distribute 5% of the market value, the fair market value of their endowment each year for charitable purposes. So again, I want to see how this rule is done, because according to the filings we've seen, they haven't actually given any money. They've spent money in operating expenses, but again, we need to actually see if they're giving their money to a charitable organization.
Referencing that same rule mentioned in this claim, the foundation is actually not legally required to distribute a minimum of 5% a year in charitable donations because, once again, the Open Hand Foundation is a public charity. This means that the $600,000 that was donated did not incur any fees or is not subject to any tax penalties. To insinuate that the money was missing and that the penalties were to be applied and that my family or myself had to float the missing funds is just not true. Also, none of the money from the Open Hand Foundation has ever funded any of my projects for my company. I want to stress that not a dollar raised from Indieland and its supporters was ever used on anything to personally benefit me, my family, or any of our companies. We never touched this money nor ever moved it. As evidence in the public documents, no one at the foundation has ever drawn a salary. Saying that we are fraudsters, that what we are doing is illegal and constitutes charity fraud, that we are using my dead mother's name to potentially embezzle money and steal is categorically false. I should have been more transparent about the money not being donated, and that's on me. But my family and I have not done anything illegal, not before then and not since. And as mentioned previously, we have correspondence from the IRS to prove that. Furthermore, my family and I are in serious conversations with our legal teams regarding next steps, as the allegations that have been made with complete disregard for the truth of the matter. These allegations were made by individuals who self-admittedly aren't even financial or legal professionals. These allegations are slanderous, and we believe were done with selfish intent. They have directly jeopardized the safety of me, my staff, and my family, and that is not okay. I want to reiterate and specifically address that both the foundation and I have been accused of forgery, embezzlement, and charity fraud. The allegations imply the foundation forged tax returns because they weren't physical signatures on them when we e-filed them, or that we altered numbers to hide income or expenses. We can account for every single dollar received and spent in the last 9 years. We do not have anything to hide. And due to the overwhelming amount of people who have been instructed to file complaints to the IRS and Department of Justice, we understand an audit may be coming and we welcome it. Our legal and financial teams have assured us that we have done nothing criminally wrong or illegal. Any possible issues in our paperwork can only be described as clerical errors and are easily amendable. Content creators and influencers should be held accountable when faced with serious allegations. However, the narrative can get taken so far away from the truth that the court of public opinion supersedes fact. I recognize and take accountability for all of my actions. At the same time, I am not going to let my reputation be compromised by allegations that are not true. I own up to my part in this, but I will not be painted as someone who is a con artist and embezzler. I won't be someone whose name gets tarnished without putting up a fight. I owe it to my friends, my family, and myself to stand up to this situation right now. I want to leave you all with how the Open Hand Foundation got its name. My mom always had this saying that she and my dad would share with each other. An open hand is always full, meaning the more you give, the more you will receive. This has been imbued in my entire life and how I've lived. And if you followed my journey, you would know that's all I ever tried to do for my friends, my family, and my community. All I ever wanted to do was to share my legacy and give. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you all very soon.